Welcome. I'd like to discuss the possibilities and realities of a sustainable stormwater infrastructure in the city of Austin. Our city infrastructure, especially related to stormwater, doesn't look very relevant until you actually have some kind of rainstorm that comes along. Water falls in the city, travels through our storm drain infrastructure, winds up in our ponds, creeks, channels, and then finally never seen by the water. Our development of the past 100 years has been about taking this volume of water falling in the city and moving it through these systems, trying to get it away. And we now manage over 1,000 miles of storm drain, over 2,000 miles of creek, and over 8,700 storm water ponds. The nature of stormwater is it's reactionary, and we have to be able to be reactive to it as it happens. And as a city, we continue to grow and we develop, and that's changing the drainage pathways across the surface of the city, and increasing the amount of impervious cover that we have to deal with, which does not allow for infiltration of rain. And as we grow, we continue to put pressure on our infrastructure, not just our storm drains failing, but the infrastructure around it also fails. And as we intensify our land use, we have water quality issues that come up, as well as we also face severe periods of drought and periods of flooding. And we also have to consider the sourcing of the materials that we use, and then the debris and the wastes that come from flood, that come from construction, that come from disposal of our assets. Coupled with that, we have to face the difficulties of balancing budgets and the competing interests that are searching for monies to complete projects. We have a land development code that currently does not help us when the properties redevelop. It can cause erosion, downstream impacts, flooding. There's a level of service that's expected by the city and the citizens, and our level of service may not be able to meet that expectation. We're also responsible to boards and commissions. We have master plan goals that we set up, and these are informed by the performance indicators that we as employees of the Watershed Protection Department have to meet. So while benchmarking for our asset management plan, looking at the level of service that other cities provide, we looked at about 18 of them, and we found that each one of them had some kind of sustainability measure for their stormwater asset. So it seemed like an important part of our asset management plan going forward to include something about sustainability. The other cities all had some kind of metric, either looking at low impact development or environmental site design, or how did they capture the benefits of the stormwater asset, not just what it's designed to do, but the ecological benefits, the ecosystem services, natural capital it provides. And in some cases, they also calculated a sustainability index, which is what is the benefit now of repairing something as opposed to doing it in the future, and what impacts will not repairing it now have for those who are in the future. So the literature on sustainable stormwater assets is growing. There are many studies out there that look at not only the greenhouse gas footprint of activities related to stormwater, but also the dollar values that those things have when it comes to the impacts of the natural systems which we impact as we move throughout the city, as we perform our operations and management. So this seems like a challenging task to try to know our infrastructure as best we can, and are we going to sort of are we going to open this Pandora's box of challenges or find truths that we may not want to know, or think that the road forward might be scary or daunting or even not possible. But this is an important task that we take on. It's important that we know what challenges we're going to face, and if we're putting things off for the future that we're not aware of that really do need to be solved today. And it shouldn't seem so scary, because we have collaborations out there we can rely on. We have our ability to innovate within our department. We have the other departments in the city that we can rely on. And the framework that we're going to develop is going to be one that's ethical. It's going to be one that's positive. It's going to be inclusive. It's going to make sure that we gather all the right information, and so we know better what we're doing and when we're doing it. And any of that fear or trepidation or reticence, ambiguity, we have to turn that into positive action and think about being empowered, giving ourselves the agency to know that we can make change and make positive change. So there's a lot going on here, but it's relatively simple. What I have across the top here is a system in which we operate, which is the hydrologic cycles, what we deal with every day. But upon this, we've placed our development and what we do as a department, which is we had this pipe to pit to receiving body and moving water away. And that's our recent past. And what we're now in is in this middle ground, right before we get to this hydrologic cycle with sustainable development, where we're trying to infiltrate as much as possible into the soil, keep stormwaters back. Not so much that we flood, but so that we were able to hold on to water, infiltrate it back into the ground. What we're currently doing in our asset management plan is this business risk evaluation and evaluating our level of service. But as we're doing this, we need to do concurrently the needs and implementation, this life cycle analysis of all our assets. We need to understand ecosystem services that our assets are providing, and we have to understand the natural capital, what it is that we're growing into, what we're taking from, and what we're borrowing, and what we're not putting back, and what we are putting back. So for all of this to happen, we have these goals and all these city plans that somehow we need to meet. We have a net zero waste goal by 2020 and net zero carbon goal by 2040. And so these are strategies that city wants to meet, or the goals that the city wants to meet. And we also have our own objectives, and we need to make sure that there's alignment between all of these. We don't actually have to do this alone too. I mean, we have stakeholders not only within the city offices, sustainability, Office of Innovation, Resource Recovery, Austin Materials Marketplace, Public Works. There's also the other groups out there that we benchmark that can help us. They're going through this as we're going through it. In Minnesota, Grand Rapids, Olympia, San Diego, King County. There's also other countries that have done this. The United Kingdom and the European Union both took a broad look at their natural capital of just the UK, try to figure out what their ecological stores were and how much they were borrowing from and taking from. And then, not only do we need to know about what we do, but what our contractors face, both on the sourcing of the material side and also on the disposals. We can talk to them about their pain points and figure out how we can help them as much as they can help us. So a life cycle assessment is more than just understanding cost benefit of an asset. A life cycle assessment actually looks at what it costs from design to the resourcing of the materials, to the transportation of those, to the construction of the asset, to the both inspection, operations, and maintenance, as well as repair and renewal, the debris that it collects or the debris that we get from a flood event, to finally the disposal of the asset. And it looks at not just the costs associated with these from a cost benefit, but also looks at the greenhouse gas. It looks at all the other actions that take place around this and the impacts and the benefits it has in not just in situ, but also along its whole life. And that's what this project life cycle circle is. It's meant to incorporate all these activities into a better knowledge of the asset. However, we're leaving something out here. We understand the city as a whole and the economic activity that takes place inside it. There are economic transactions that happen. There's taxes. There's people accruing wealth from jobs and rents and the other economic activities that take place in the city. And those are easily calculable. We have them. We are able to do it. But what about our natural infrastructure? What about the benefits that these offer? We are able to develop along WBurdick, and that provides a pretty hefty tax benefit. So we should be able to calculate that. We can. And we know we can calculate this recreation activity, running along the lake, swimming in Barton Springs Pool, and kayaking in the lake. But there's also then the ecosystem services. What are the benefits that we provide to the animals and biota that live in the lake? These have benefits. These keep, water clean, they provide habitat, it provides recreational activity, cultural activity. The lake also provides an air conditioning system for the city. It has a cooling effect. There are lots of cities out there that look at how all this works together. It looks at acidification, eutrophication, the greenhouse carbon sequestration. So we need to start calculating these and start calculating and adding dollar values to them. We're well suited in our storm drain infrastructure knowledge. We know pretty much where it's located, age was put in, materials, sizes, and we're slowly gaining knowledge on all that and how much impact they take, the consequence of their failure, the condition, the effective end of life. And we're starting to learn more and more about our infrastructure as it functions in the city. We're building onto our GIS, and we're able to know better what's happening. But this is not necessarily married or synced up with our natural infrastructure. The green spaces that we have, the creeks and the storm drain lines that they function as, and then the receiving bodies of water. We need to marry all this together such that when it comes to a rain event, we're able to say from the very smallest private development site, we can know what's being captured in a rainwater cistern, what's being then captured in a rain garden before it even hits our creeks or our streets. And then as those things coalesce, they move into ponds and then further down to receiving bodies of water. All this information can be gathered in a GIS, geometric network, and inform us so that we know better the asset life cycle. As all these things function together, what's their benefit, what's their cost? What are we taking from and what are we receiving from each of these assets that we own and operate? We're doing a pretty good job so far. We have our green infrastructure in place. We have on small sites, rainwater capture, green roofs, rain gardens. These are helping inform our land development code and help us identify what's happening with these different land use types where these are performing. And then this is keeping us responsible to that triple bottom line. So when we align ourselves, we're able to say these assets are helping us make sure that the work we do is not only providing benefit to the people of Austin, but it's providing an environmental benefit and it has an economic benefit. So where we're headed is this coalescing of data streams for natural built environments, such that we're building this knowledge base so when we do perform activities, we're able not just to protect people's lives, prevent against erosion and improve water quality, but we have all these other benefits too. We're creating habitat. We're providing the cooling effect of shade trees. We're providing the cooling effect of water being retained in healthy ecosystems. And what we need to establish is a threshold such that as we build our infrastructure, we're moving away from some pain point, some place that we know from which returning from is not going to be easy. And we need to then calculate how best we're moving away from that. We don't really know this line and we don't know these lines, and so we need to establish this threshold. We need to establish what we're doing and if we're getting closer to it or further away from it, such that we're able to then show where we were, so this very urban streetscape area where there's not much happening, to one that's restorative, one that has an impact for the people that live in it. And so we know the stores from which we're taking and the stores that we're getting back to. We can calculate the fossil fuels that we're burning, but we can also sequester that with tree plantings and other urban water amenity. And then finally, all this information needs to be disseminated out. We need to make sure that what we learn is communicated not only to the people to whom we're responsible, but the citizens of Austin are aware of it, that they know why we're doing it, what we're doing, and that we have their best interests in mind. Anyway, that's what the life cycle assessment is going to look like for our storm drain infrastructure. I want to thank you very much for listening today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.